Welcome back to the Vera House podcast. If you didn't know, Richmond, Virginia is the new Miami. Richmond is the new New York City.
Apparently.
Richmond is the new Los Angeles, California. It's the new Hollywood. It's the new Hollyland.
I guess.
Whatever that means, we dive into that in today's show. We talk about Dominion Energy. There's a public hearing happening because starting this month, you're going to have an additional surcharge added to your bill. And this surcharge could last for up to a decade from now that you'll be paying every single month on your power bill. There's a public hearing on August 11th. We highly encourage everybody to at least listen to that part of the episode, get familiar with it, and maybe we'll even see you at the public hearing. We also talk about Busch Gardens and how they owe like $20-something million in back taxes, and just kind of talking about like nostalgic Richmond a little bit. Like we got into some fun stuff today, right?
Yeah, we did. We definitely got into some nostalgic Richmond. We talked about putt-putt, long time miniature golf, jungle and dinosaur themed play place is being demolished after all this time. Special place in my heart. I know Myke's been there as well as a young child. And we just kind of talked about with all of the modernization of Richmond as we know it, we are seeing some of these treasures of our past being removed and potentially replaced. And it's a bittersweet moment because progress is always a good thing, but there is the cost at hand as well. We also talked about if you're lonely, if you're feeling like you're not a part of the community, fear not. The community is there. We found a Reddit post from someone that recommended that anybody who was interested in meeting people in the community to join their medieval sword fighting class. And that just brings like so much joy and like levity to the situation that there's even a thing such as a medieval sword fighting class. I'm not even a little bit surprised, but so we kind of get into that a little bit. We also talk about the ongoing, I would call it an epidemic, maybe even not that serious, of the lack of some good news. We talk about what's bad on the news. We talk about what's negatively impacting us. And that's largely what we see when we do open our news channels online. What about the good news? And how maybe prioritizing some of the good news and good things in your life and in your neighborhood and community can have a positive impact on you and the people around you. So stay tuned for all that. We'll get into it.
Did you know that Richmond is the new Miami?
I think I heard this somewhere or saw it on some place on the internet.
It's the new Richmond, Virginia is the new New York City. It's the new Brickell City Center of Miami. It is the new biggest city on the block.
It's not even a little bit surprising to me. It's kind of been trending that way, at least in the last like 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Everybody's coming here. Richmond's the place to be. Yeah. New York, watch your back.
Virginia Beach is the new San Diego.
Is it really?
Yeah, dude. It's beautiful.
Bummer.
75, low humidity, sunny, beautiful every day.
Yeah, have you been to Virginia Beach lately? It's not San Diego.
No, dude. The reason that it sounds familiar is because I'm sure you've seen it. I've been seeing it. It's sort of like this ironic, silly trend on social media. And especially from the generations a bit younger than us and VCU students and stuff. I actually find it to be quite hilarious. And it's very like just silly, funny, clever. I kind of like it. I just think it's funny.
Yeah.
And I always crack up when I see these videos. And I'm just scrolling on Instagram, especially when logged into the Vera House account. And you just see these funny videos like, everyone's saying Richmond is the new Miami. And these posts have like thousands of shares on them and comments of like people saying like, what city do you live in?
Yeah.
And for some people, it just goes right over their head. It's just one of those weird social media trends where if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you'll probably never get it.
Or you'll get it. It's like super late.
Yeah.
And you'll post about it or make your own post. And people are like, yeah, that train's already left the station, dude. Now we're on to Richmond is the new Midwest.
Yep.
You know, Richmond is the new Utah.
I wonder if I can like easily find some of these posts. It does always just like crack me up, you know, because it's always paired with like some funny scenery, you know, looking off one of the rooftops here in Richmond at the Richmond skyline and stuff.
It's like, I mean, and like, so the clips are funny because it starts off like a lot of those like man on the street interviews or whatever. And for a second, you're like, oh, this guy is definitely not in Richmond. He's somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then you look in the background and it's like, yeah, there's like the Al Cheetah Theater. It's like right there in the background.
Yeah. It's like Richmond is the new Italy. 5 reasons why Richmond is the new NYC. POV, your friend just moved from Richmond to New York City.
We're here to get home, bro. It's like $3.
$3?
Yeah.
No, in Richmond, it's free, right?
Bro, what's the matter?
Dude, it's nothing, bro.
We're in Washington Square Park right now, bro. What does it matter?
Bro, it's not the same.
What?
It's a little park, bro, in Richmond.
Hi, bro. You're trying to go to the Hudson?
Hudson?
Yeah, the Hudson River, bro.
Dude, is that like your version of the James River?
All right, you know what this is? You know what this is? Okay. This is the Gen Z version of people who are so pro Richmond, no matter where they go, they always compare it.
Yeah.
And they're never satisfied that anywhere else that they go is as good.
Yeah.
Like the guy that like he was saying at the end of that clip, you go to New York, it's like, oh yeah, man, but I like Richmond better.
Yeah.
Or you go to California, like, yeah, but it's no Richmond.
Dude, it cracks me up.
Yeah, it's that.
He's like, yeah, the Hudson River. He's like, what's that? Is that your version of the James River?
I mean, I think there's a part of it that's like kind of true. That's like, you know, somewhat like realistic about the sentiment about living here. It's like you're here for long enough, and maybe you've been to New York, you've been to Chicago, you've been to Miami, but you've got like a soft spot for Richmond. You're like, yeah, I mean, it's cool, but I think I'm still missing back home.
Yeah. It's these two guys. Shout out to them. They're funny, man.
Yeah.
This kid, Anthony, and this guy, Caleb, and they kind of, they lead the charge on these like silly ass videos, man.
Yeah, I love it.
And they all do well. And they always just like, every time I see them, it just cracks me up.
Mm-hmm.
Is RPA the next NYC? And I mean, yeah, it's irony and it's satire, but at the same time, a lot of people from these places are moving here.
Right.
And I guess it's no coincidence that this place is like blowing up, you know, and we are seeing like cool initiatives in the city that we've been wanting forever. You know, it's like you go visit, you know, LA or just a place that's honestly like a little bit healthier, a little bit more innovative, a little bit more outside and in the community. There's more green space, there's more parks, there's just more stuff going on. And that's the thing where when I come home, I'm like, dude, I wish we had that here.
That's true.
And little by little, it's starting to happen.
Yeah. Which I think it was a big motivating factor for me specifically. And a lot of people my age, call it maybe 9-10 years ago, that we were happy here, but I had a bias towards places like New York. And like, I was fascinated with New York City and Chicago and DC and Miami and Los Angeles. And because Richmond wasn't anywhere near as like cool or put together or like fully developed, fully realized as those places were or seemed to be, especially if you'd only seen them in movies or on TV and, you know, stuff on the internet back then.
Yeah.
And then when I had the opportunity to go, it was like, whoa, New York is so much better than Richmond, and LA is so much better than Richmond. But then time goes on and you grow up and the city itself matures some in some directions. Sometimes there's a few steps back. There's definitely been, you know, some steps back in a lot of ways, but recently there's been a lot of forward progressive movement in the right direction that are rivaling and comparing, you know, being compared to other cities like New York and LA and all that. Yeah, it's, call it 10, 15 years too behind the curve because those cities were advancing at the same speed. But I think that's just kind of how the timeline has been going. And it's Richmond's turn now, that's cool with me. I'm old enough now to appreciate that that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you go to some of these big cities, even cities like Baltimore. Like I've been to Baltimore for shows, and I remember when the show was over, and this is back when I was drinking, go out on the town and there's all these cool little speakeasies that you could just like bop into and like have a blast. And that type of stuff was always missing from Richmond. But even over the past several years, and even like going back a decade, even to like the OG Jungle Room days and before that, there was maybe like the little speakeasy behind Sabai, if you remember that.
I do.
And so the signs of that stuff coming have been in the pipeline for a long time. It's taken a long time for Richmond, I think, to like develop in that direction. It's been a while since we've made this comparison, but even in the early episodes of this show, we would compare Richmond to Austin a little bit. And I think maybe that's because I've been to Austin a couple times in the past few years. And Austin is a river city. It's a very progressive city and a very artsy city. It's obviously much bigger, much more popular, higher population, a lot more money and development there. But Richmond is, I think, a similar comparison to a place like that. And a place like Austin has a lot of cool rooftop bars, a lot of speakeasies, a lot of hotels, a lot of cool stuff going on. And yeah, those are all the things that we see happening here. The big hotel that's going to go in right there on Boulevard. What was that? I guess that was like a Hardee's or a Wendy's or something. There's like a huge hotel that's going to go there. Yeah. So it's happening. It's definitely happening. And then Browns Island opens back up next year, I think. So I think it's going to happen very quickly. Like I think summer 2027, we're going to be like, wait, where do we live?
Yeah, man. Which I'm excited for. I've always, not always, but like I said, over the last, call it 5 or 6 years, maybe a little longer than that, have started to, one, rediscover the city, being born and raised here, and then realizing that there's so much more here that I haven't seen yet, which is pretty cool. To like rediscover, like, fall in love with your city again. And then to, at the same time, see it growing and blossoming and kind of maturing to a degree that it's having, or it's showing signs of building these things that I often envied about other cities. It's great. It's a great time to be here and like to live here and see it happening. It's a great time to move here, but I want to say that very quietly because we got enough. Just slow the roll.
Yeah.
We got enough. But it reminds me of, the things that I really enjoyed about it before I got jaded and like grumpy that it was changing.
Yeah.
Do you remember putt-putt golf?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Did you go to the putt-putt on Midlow?
I don't think I mean, maybe I did when I was a kid. Like, of course I remember that spot. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty positive I went there when I was young. And some people may not know this, but I lived here when I was young, and then I left and I lived in Florida for a while, and then I came back. And then by the time I came back, I was maybe a little too old for putt-putt. So, but I do remember that location for sure and driving by it all the time.
First off, never too old for putt-putt.
Fair assessment, fair point.
Secondly, they are finally tearing down the putt-putt golf on Midlow.
Yeah, because it's just been like sitting there kind of rotting, right?
It's been sitting there for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure how long it's been sitting there vacant, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to remodel it for a while. This is years ago when I would drive down Midlow and I'd still see it standing there. Kind of like a lot of things that I hold dear as childhood memories. You do hope that they see a second life or they're reimagined and that another generation can enjoy them the way that I did. I think I even got an opportunity to like go in there in the last 10 years just to see what it was. And I definitely saw some photos from back when it was open and at its prime. This is like late 90s. Mid
90s for sure.
Yeah, late 90s. It was awesome. It was dinosaur themed. So they're like giant dinosaur and like animal figurines and statues all over it. It was, dinosaur putt-putt. So there's just all these cool little putt-putt things. And the inside was like a cave.
Yeah.
Like, you remember like Nickelodeon and those crazy Nickelodeon TV shows like the Adventures of the Hidden Temple or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
Where like everything was like a man-made cave.
Yeah.
That was a big thing for children's facilities was like, let's make it like a jungle or like dinosaurs.
Yeah.
It was like that on the inside, but it was full of arcade games and there was 2 floors. You go in and you're this big cave and go to the second floor, play arcades, go to the first floor, play arcades, get your tickets, get your prizes. And then out back, they had bumper carts or bumper boats.
Yeah.
They're
Nice.
like single driver, gasoline powered go-karts, but in a pool.
Yeah.
Bumper cars, but it was awesome.
That's pretty cool.
It was cool, man.
The 90s, dude. RIP.
Yeah.
It will be missed forever.
And
It's like that 90s lifestyle.
I saw this picture. Somebody found it posted it on Reddit. It says, "Thanks for 54 years of shit. Been our pleasure."
That's funny. Well,
Yeah.
at least I guess that's a sign that they have some humor about it. I
They
suppose.
definitely do. They
That's
definitely
funny.
do. It just, like I said, just reminded me of places like, Azalea Mall, which we talked about, and like the putt-putt golf and some of the things that were staples of what made Richmond iconic in that time period. We talked about the Coliseum being taken or being demolished. We talked about the 6th Street Marketplace. These are like the last remnants of what Richmond was recognized for in that time period. Yeah. Just making that transition.
Yeah, Richmond has been kind of frozen in time for a while.
Yeah.
And I think all that got kind of mixed up and stirred up during COVID and all that. A lot of things changed. And for people who are older than us that are familiar with all these things, over time, it is a bummer to see, either things just happen. Like, for example, remember when a car like drove into the front of Boulevard Burger and Brew on Boulevard? Like, that was like a few years ago, I think. So stuff like that happens because that place has been a burger diner joint forever. It wasn't always Boulevard Burger and Brew. It was called something else before that was like a staple in Richmond. But that building and the fact that it's all glass, it's a glass diner. It's been there for, who knows how many years. Things just happen, things happen and people run into it and stuff. One of the coolest relics and probably my favorite building in all of Richmond is the old City Hall. Have you ever seen it?
Where is it located?
It's insane. So it's on Broad Street.
If I'm thinking about the same place,
it's basically right across.
It's right across. It's like a castle.
Yeah.
It's like a gray castle.
Yep. Yeah.
And they put an addition onto it that looks more modern.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's pretty sick. And so when you look at stuff like that, you realize how old Richmond really, really is. If you pull up an image of it, it's very, very cool. Like, look at that, dude. That's Richmond, man. That's nuts. So cool.
Yeah. It's so Victorian era. And it's legitimately a castle. This is the second Richmond. The first Richmond is in the UK.
Yeah.
So it does explain a lot of the lineage for that Victorian era, pointy roof, very gaudy presence inducing or presence building architecture, which is cool because I like that. We talked about the shitification of everything.
Yeah.
And these buildings are being preserved on purpose, which is great.
Yeah. So this was built, construction started in 1886. It did not open until 1894. Yeah.
The term or the phrase, "they don't make them like they used to," comes to mind.
Yeah, definitely not, man. It's got a 200-foot clock tower. It was built of a granite exterior, stunning cast iron interior atrium. It was saved from demolition in the 1970s, and it's now just an official state office building.
Yeah.
The first floor is free and open to the public. It's actually been on my list to want to visit that for quite a while.
Yeah, I didn't know it was open to the public. I've actually never seen the inside.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I should go do that. And then you just never go do it. Because it's hard to be a tourist in the city that you live in. It's just hard.
Mm-hmm. We got lunches and coffee to get to, man. We don't think about going to the City Hall building.
Yeah. Well, many people, specifically myself, it's like you have bad memories of going and parking over there because it's like, oh, I got to go to the John Marshall Courthouse, and then the great thing is, this is probably a long running city scam, is they wait till you go into the court and then they give you a ticket while you're at court. And it's like, they're like, oh, gotcha. And I think the city probably thinks it's funny, but
I think it's funny.
Yeah. It's not funny when it happens to you though, And man, I shouldn't give away my secret on this podcast.
What's your secret?
Many, many years ago, I started carrying around like one of those green ticketed parking envelopes.
I used to do that.
Yep. And I'll park and I get out and I just stick it under my windshield wiper so that it looks like I already got a ticket.
It's like, they won't give me 2. They will.
Most
of the time.
Yes. Luckily, it's always worked out for me, but I do know that sometimes it doesn't work. Do you think there were really ponies at Pony Pasture? Speaking of like old Richmond.
I have no idea. When I think about Pony Pasture, I think about this one singular time that I technically went to that spot on the river, and it was really shallow.
Yeah.
That's all I remember about it.
Well, it's beautiful to run and like ride your bike along there. I mean, it's, a beautiful part of town. The road is pretty calm. You can go and get your exercise in. There's a little dirt trail alongside of it, right along the river. And the water is somewhat low there. And there's a lot of cool little hangout spots. And depending on when you go and where specifically you go, it can be pretty serene and like pretty calm. Now, obviously the parking lot gets a little bit crazy. And then that main area there by the aqueduct gets a little bit crazy. And it can be very dangerous too, because it looks like it's calm. But if you were to step, off of that aqueduct, like people die there. I don't want to say every year, but like dozens of people have died at Pony Pasture from trying to walk along those ridges where you see the water just drop down, like those little aqueducts there. Because if you step right there, that water will siphon you under. It will pull you right under there. So it's, it can be pretty dangerous. But Pony Pasture used to be a pony pasture. Who would have thought? Right. And it's like, we're so used to just thinking of it as Pony Pasture. And you look at it now and it's like, there's no wild ponies there.
Aren't there?
Well, there used to be. So a woman named Michelle Garrigan, she had her ponies there in the mid 1960s. And the pasture was home to a number of horses and ponies. Most of them were owned by families living in all the houses nearby. So she remembers growing up near Pony Pasture, and it was just like a big playground. It was just a fun place to kind of grow up near. And they would just hang out with the ponies and stuff when they were kids. And there was a big barn. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
That's a picture from Pony Pasture.
Yeah. So there was a huge barn there and like a big meadow. So where the parking lot is now was just a huge meadow, and people driving by would always stop and pet all the ponies through the fence and stuff. But, and during floods, during all the floods, they would pull the ponies back and put them, in the barns and in the pens and stuff. Now in 1972, there were these people who became owners of the islands and all the parcels along the river, which they then donated to the city with the agreement that it would become public parkland. And this donated land is now where Reedy Creek is, where the little Reedy Creek nature zone and nature building is. And since then, the park has expanded to like well over 600 acres. Wow. It's crazy. But that, for the most part, is Pony Pasture. And a couple other like cool tidbits that I want to read are: Pony Pasture is one of the most iconic stretches of the James. It's for walkers, paddlers, cyclists, runners, and anglers. So people fishing. It's a very like outdoorsy area, right? So I think this is a picture for when Pony Pasture first opened in like the 80s. Okay. And here's what I was looking for. So in the 70s and 80s, the Rocks were a notorious hangout for motorcycle gangs, and it garnered a reputation aligned with heavy drinking, violence, and general lawlessness. The second floor of the park bathhouse is a former police substation, established in hopes of quelling the rowdiness. As the years went on, things quieted down, and by the 2000s, the spot settled back into a more relaxed rhythm, one more in tune with the memories of roaming horses and natural serenity. So I think that's just like crazy because, like we, at least when we were growing up, I think of Belle Isle as like the rowdy place where people were like doing drugs and getting drunk and getting in fights and like all that stuff. That was like Belle Isle was basically our generation's Pony Pasture. Yeah. But like the generations older than us, Pony Pasture was their Belle Isle, and they were getting in fights and all that good stuff.
I was going to say that not much has changed.
I know.
Pony Pasture, Belle Isle, Reedy Creek, Osborne Landing. Before it was, God, we were just talking about that place. Not the boathouse.
Lily Pad.
The Lily Pad.
Yeah.
The river.
Yep.
Lawlessness, drinking, violence. that is part of growing up here.
Yeah.
At some point in time, if you've lived in the city or spent any time in the city in like adolescent years, you made your way down there for something.
Definitely.
Something maybe a little nefarious. Maybe you go to the rope swing under the train bridge, which I have yet to go to, but there's like a big rope that you can swing. People will like traverse the stands or the pillars that hold up the train bridge. I've seen people DJ underneath the bridge at the very top where the train is directly above them.
Yeah.
I've seen people do things in that little spot right there. Yeah, because what are you gonna do? You're gonna call the police? The police gonna come down there on their mountain goats? How are they gonna get down there in the first place?
Yeah.
So it is a place of free think, free spirit, free living for the most part. And nowadays,
maybe a few black eyes too.
Yeah, maybe a few. Let's clarify: black eyes, not black guys.
You might run into a few black guys down there too, though.
You probably will. This is still Richmond. So yeah.
Black eyes punched in the face.
Yes. Maybe a naked bum or two, depending on which part you go down. But yeah, it is very quintessential Richmond. The river being its own main character.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, and it's time, bygone time. It's a bygone past, and Belle Isle has become pretty nice, man. I feel like every like once a month, I'm either down there running or riding my bike. They're constantly making improvements. They've got the whole new nature park down there, all new gravel. And the way that they solve the police problem now is they have the whole maintenance trail. So all the cops, they can access all the different parts of the river pretty easily these days. Whereas I'm sure it didn't used to be like that for a long time. It's probably much harder.
Yeah. I mean, as we talk about the progress and the growth and the modernization of a lot of Richmond, does come some of the erosion of what made Richmond feel free-ish and like a little loosey-goosey, little lawless. It just makes me remember, things like Best Friends Day. But like, granted, I never went to a Best Friends Day, but like things that were happening similar to that. The punk, and like when I say punk, I don't mean just the music. I mean the mentality about anti-establishment, doing whatever you want and not asking permission and getting away with it.
Yeah.
That was like huge in the mid 2000s, late 2000s and like 20 teens, kind of when I was coming up here. And growing up in the suburbs, I had never seen anything like that. So when I got to like really start hanging out in the city and I kind of fell into the like that subculture, it was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is cool. And it made me think about, well, now, one, the city is safer, so that they're trying to make it safer for everyone that lives here, which means cracking down on things like, unlawful groups and gatherings and excessive partying and noise and like live music without a permit and things that made the punk scene what it was.
Right.
So it's not specifically attacking what that is. Maybe there's some elements that they're trying to weed out that weren't the best for the scene in general.
Yeah.
But it has the effect of like ruining or diminishing how cool it was.
Yeah, like waters down this kind of cool hidden subculture that Richmond has. Like you mentioned Best Friends Day. It makes me think of Slaughterama. It makes me think of Burning Van. It makes me think of the cool like PFL parties and stuff. And there is just like all this cool stuff happening where if you're not tapped in, you would never even hear about it. You wouldn't even know that it existed, Yeah, tapped in is like a good way to put it, because it was only when I got to like a certain age that when I started like, meeting people that had no idea what I was talking about, when I was like, oh yeah, do you know the Party Liberation Foundation? Do you know, the Firehouse Theater? Do you know, like Best Friends Day? Do you know about First Fridays? And they're like, I know about Willow Lawn Mall and I've been to Shore Pump. Yeah.
And it's like, you can live here and have no clue about what else really goes on. You can live a full, flourishing life, have a great family, have a great time, but still not be privy to all of that stuff. And I think that's kind of why it's cool, because it's like it's like an unspoken club that you're in if you're in.
Well, it kind of speaks to like why we were excited about this podcast and like how we come up with all this stuff to talk about, because it's like this thing that is kind of hard to explain without having context. And like a podcast is a great way to give people context on some of these things. And you and I have had like similar but different experiences alongside of each other growing up here. And there's just so much cool stuff. And if you're not in the position to hear about it through a friend or somebody that you know, or maybe you don't live like in the city limits, because that's a big part of it. Like if you know, like you mentioned Willow Lawn, you know, if you live even just that like Glenside and you live just a little bit outside of the city, yeah, it's possible that you aren't familiar with a lot of these things that either have gone on or are going on, you know, but especially some of the stuff that's happened like in the past, lots of, you know, a lot of cool stuff.
It's one memory is like coming up right now, and I'm sure you can appreciate it, but I used to street race, like legit, like Need for Speed, but in a Honda Civic.
Yeah.
And the street racing scene was huge.
Yeah.
And when to my, like, now that I'm remembering it, there's no possible way that it could exist the way that it did back then.
Yeah.
And there was like a little bit of lawlessness, and people used to attribute it to different things. The crime rate was higher in the 90s. So people used to say that the police were preoccupied with things that were more of a priority, like violent crime or organized crime. So, you know, a couple hooligans driving busted Honda Civics up and down Broad Street wasn't an issue. But it wasn't just a couple of hooligans driving Honda Civics. It was like hundreds of teenagers driving all kinds of cars, meeting up at the Lombardi Kroger parking lot. We would occupy the entire parking lot, which is massive. And the gas station was there. So you can, you know, fuel up, hang out. And it was just a car meet. It was a car meet for hours, hours and hours, Friday, Saturday, every weekend for like an entire year. It was just unspoken. You just knew it was there, because this is before like Facebook and social media and things like that. MySpace was a thing. So I think maybe there was a group, but you knew who you were going to the meet, and maybe you would run your car. Yeah. Because nobody knew if there was going to be a race. Like they knew that there would be, but not where and how it would go down. It was always different. So you meet up, you see your boys, you know, I got my busted Honda Civic that was like 3 shades of red. It was slammed to the ground and it barely ran, but it was real fast. Yeah. That's all that mattered. And meet up with my buddies. We'd hang out in the parking lot for a little while. We'd walk around and see everybody else's cars. And then the police would show up and politely ask for everyone to leave when Kroger was over. It's kind of like they were okay with us being there because we weren't causing any trouble. Yeah. And after we dispersed from the Kroger, it was like, you would hear it echo it across the parking lot. Somebody would yell, it's like, Bells Road, Bells Road. Yeah. We're going to Bells Road. And sure enough, 200 little idiots speeding down 95 to get to the Bells Road exit off of Interstate 95 South, right by the Marlboro building, because you could take that service road off to the left-hand side if you're going that direction to an industrial park that was always closed after like 8 o'clock. Yeah. And there was like a 1/4-mile strip of road that was pretty straight and had no lights on it. And that's where people lined up to race. Yeah. And every weekend someone wrecked their car, and every weekend someone beat somebody else. So it was like a week's worth of drama and like conversation and talking about it until the next week. There's no way that could exist here now. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, you know, and it makes an appearance on every episode, but you definitely couldn't do it now because you got cameras pointed at all the cars and scanning all the license plates, you know? Yeah. Yeah. I think I even was introducing myself and kind of telling somebody that their friend was a fan of the podcast, and they were just like, "Oh, you have a podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's called the Vera House Podcast. We talk about Richmond." And the first question is like, "You guys going to talk about Flock?" It's like, "Yeah, we'll talk about Flock." Yeah, we basically run a Flock commentary show. Yeah, you know, we run the official Flock podcast. I hope that's not the case. You know what's ironic is the like CEO of Flock condemned everybody who criticizes Flock as terrorists. It's like, how ironic is that? It's like I mean, it's classic narcissism, right? Like the person committing the terrorism calls everybody else terrorists. And you know, this is a good example of why we're we're good opposite sides of the argument sometimes. I agree with how nefarious it seems in a lot of ways it's hard to prove, and I think that's by design. But I also can't not acknowledge, because I'm a glass half full guy most of the time, maybe the initial intentions were positive, noble even. Maybe somewhere along the lines, it got corrupted and it got molded and distorted into this weird surveillance state, unconstitutional invasion of privacy that it kind of is. But maybe initially it was like, I think I figured out a way to keep people safe. I'm not saying that that's the case. That's just what I'm choosing to believe.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice idea.
Like I gotta believe that it's not always a bunch of old or even young, just goober, money hungry, just power hungry, nefarious thieves crafting up ideas to steal things from people. I gotta believe that there's some good in the world.
Well, yeah, I agree. I just don't think it can be found in, big tech. Have you ever seen the text message from Mark Zuckerberg from like back when he was at Harvard, when he first created Facebook?
No, but I've seen The Social Network, the movie.
Yeah. And even that is like telling the story through very rose tinted glasses.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we came up with this amazing idea, and it definitely touches on, a lot of the early story and stuff like that. But there's this thing where, let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, here you go. It's there's so many text messages, so it's probably hard to find. But basically, here's a message exchange between Mark Zuckerberg and his friend when he was in school and first created Facebook. He literally texted them and said, "If you ever need info about anyone at Harvard, just ask. I have over 4,000 emails, pictures, addresses, and SMS numbers." He said, "What? How'd you manage that?" He's like, "People just submitted it. I don't know why. They just trust me. Dumb fucks." And so it's like, yes, it's just one anecdotal piece of, whatever. But dude, I'm telling you, the more when you look into this stuff and and here's the thing is they all say it out loud. Like, go to any of their websites and they hail it as like, they're proud of these things. They're proud of like, go to the World Economic Forum. They're like, you will own nothing. You'll be happy. You're just going to eat Bill Gates lab meat and eat bugs. You're going to rent for the rest of your life. You're going to pay 15 to 30% interest on everything. You're going to pay taxes on everything. And we're going to, you ever seen that picture of the cow that's like been milked to death? I
didn't mean to get you all fired up.
I know. Here you go. This is these big tech companies, okay? And this is us. We're this cow, all right? And he's like, "Good morning, sunshine," right? He's like, "Good morning." And it's like, here's us waiting to get milked. And we got nothing left, They're draining us of every ounce of our attention, every dollar in our wallets, and every piece of data or information that they find valuable. And Flock is no exception.
Yes, that's a really creepy image.
It is.
But I did see on Diary of a CEO, Steven was talking to someone who's in like the AI space, and was doing like a future projection, and the caption for that video was that everyone will be a millionaire in the future. Because in his version of the future, which we can kind of already see like little bits of it now, is that AI will replace lots of jobs. Right now, it's only able to replace a handful of jobs, thousands, but that's still not, in the grand scheme of things, not that many. As time goes on, there will be more of these AI capabilities that won't require anyone to actually monitor them or facilitate it. It'll just run itself. And potentially entire industries will be completely run by AI. And the people that used to work there won't have anything to do. The people that are currently learning that skill set won't be able to get jobs because they won't exist. So what do? Those people just go into another career? Well, if everybody in this one industry or multiple industries is also not going to have a future where they go to a job and work, provide money for their family and for themselves, what are they going to do? Well, they can't all go to the other jobs. That will be oversaturated. There's too many people trying to get the same jobs. So the idea is like a basic universal income. You've heard this before.
Yep.
I don't really think that'll work, but this guy was pretty confident that there will come a tipping point where a decision will have to get made in that regard. Does the federal government become responsible for ensuring that everyone in the country has money and food to provide for themselves, to buy things, to live off of, so on and so forth? He said if that eventuality comes to pass, it won't be a little bit of money. It will be, a small amount in the beginning, but eventually, because AI is very efficient and effective, the money that people used to pay or companies used to pay for employees and people to work the jobs will be routed elsewhere for the growth of the economy in itself, the growth of the industry and business, but then also for people to be able to provide for themselves. He's saying that it could go from $10,000 to $20,000 a year to over $1 million, and then to like $10 million a year in the far, far future. But then at the very end of that statement, he's like, well, I don't really see that happening, but it's a nice thought.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, man, what are we really doing here?
It is. That's a beautiful thought.
Mm-hmm.
That a one world government would want us to make millions of dollars and reach our fullest potential.
Yeah.
But they don't want that.
No.
They just don't.
They want the cow.
Yeah, they want that, and I mean, that is what, state sponsored welfare and food stamps and stuff is about. Like, they raise a lot of funding, and don't get me wrong, these things all help people. Absolutely. They all help people very, very much. But it's a self-fulfilling thing. It's like they're not doing it because it helps people. They're doing it because it gets people into all of these state-sponsored government programs, and it gets them funding and it gets them leverage to pass all the other stuff that they want. And I mean, dude, it's no secret that the government commingles with all these big publicly traded companies and corporate entities and stuff. And so it's been said forever, follow the money, just follow the money. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
And this brings us into, there always reaches a point in the podcast where it's like, okay, I'm really sorry to do this to everybody, but on this topic and starting this month, Dominion Energy customers will see a nice, friendly $8 surcharge on their bills. This is at minimum a 12-month fee, and it's issued to help supplement the company's $1 billion in unrecovered fuel costs. So Dominion has decided that they're going to equally bill hundreds of thousands of customers on their bill so that they can recover their investment into spending fuel and extra energy and all these other things.
How does that make sense?
Well, this could last a decade, and basically they just charge us. It's like, hey, everybody, please do us a favor, use less water, use less energy, because we're over here and we're really busy. And we're your local power company, and we've been working really hard with the government to get these data centers launched. And we need all the energy and all the power and all the resources and all the water we can get. And so you're going to pay for it, and you're going to conserve, and you're going to help us do it.
So we spend more money and we're encouraged to use less.
Yeah.
But we're also spending more money to pay for somebody else's problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of things. Dominion says a typical customer using 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity each month will pay about $312 over time to cover the $1.1 billion in unrecovered fuel costs. Dominion warns that energy usage may rise due to weather, and that will be reflected on your bills as well. Dominion says it's working to generate more power and build new transmission lines to help reduce the need to purchase power from other providers, which is a factor in rising electric bills. There is a public hearing on this topic on August 11th.
Should we go?
Probably, yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast and you disagree that you should pay more money for something that you're encouraged to use less of, and you didn't consent to being charged for something that you didn't actually agree to purchase, go to the hearing.
Yeah.
We'll be there.
And I mean, if it is one of these public hearings where they film it, I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm in. And I'd be happy to stand up and say something. We should do that. So yeah, Dominion sent a letter to everybody saying that the increase in their bill is tied to rising fuel prices and the cost of them having to purchase power from other providers over the past year.
The question still remains, how is that any of our problem?
It's not.
They're the service provider. We are the customer. We pay for the service, not for the service provider's ability to get the service.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it's just like anything, man. These companies get so big that they can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want, and they have all the lobbying power. They have all the control. They have all the influence in local government and local politics. They can do whatever they want, man. They can do whatever they want, and then they sponsor all the biggest things. The
River Rock.
Yeah, they sponsor, they do all that stuff. And they're like, look at all the good we do for the community. It's like,
no, they have a whole division, a department that's probably at least one floor of their brand new, spanking, shiny, flashy, colorful building downtown that's devoted to showing the public how cool they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like obviously if they weren't there, someone else would be doing it. Like,
Right.
It's the power company. It's the power company, so it's like, it is a big immovable object. And there's only so much people can do. And at the end of the day, like, yeah, we live in the modern world and we like to have power and we like to use it. I mean, we're using plenty of it right now. And the thing is like, I mean, I could go down the whole rabbit hole, which we've talked about before, which is like energy already exists. And yes, I understand that it costs money to like transfer it into something usable, right? But it's like, there's tons of renewable energy sources. The problem is that those don't make any money. So they're not going to use any of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the renewable energy used to be this thing that it was almost like a myth. It's almost one, if there were energy companies or power companies that were talking about it, they always would say it's 30 years away or it's 40 years away before we can realistically implement renewable energy. And I know within the last 5 to 10 years, I've seen examples of other countries that have implemented their versions of renewable energy to great success. I was talking to a friend the other day and I saw years ago, I think it was just a proposal, but in Scandinavia and Sweden, I believe, they proposed tiles, basically, pavers on the ground in metropolitan areas like a park or sidewalks, that when you walked over them, they compressed slightly, and those compressions generated a small amount of electricity using science that I'm not going to explain. But you put enough of these pavers in one specific area where there's a lot of foot traffic, it generates a substantial amount of electricity, which could substitute for the lack in the grid. It's the same way that people used to say that if everyone had a solar panel on their roof, it would reduce the power need and the price of everyone's electric bill.
Right. It's
not a replacement for the power coming from Dominion, for example, but it's a way to make up the difference and reduce costs for everybody. And the question is always, if it works, why can't we use it here?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. We watch these big companies do all this stuff. Seems like there's nothing we can do about it. And it's frustrating. But then we see really big, cool businesses like Busch Gardens slowly disappear. Did you see that
I didn't. I saw you had something about that.
Dude, they owe over $22 million in taxes. Jesus. And at the end of the day, they're a theme park. And like, don't get me wrong, they make tens of millions of dollars, right? And yes, they're selling services and overpriced funnel cakes and beers and like whatever. But at the end of the day, like, it's a theme park. It's meant for entertainment and fun and like all that stuff.
Turkey legs.
And they probably will not survive. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of crazy. And it's like they owe all this money in taxes. Taxes are illegal, by the way. Just saying.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Like, everything changed in 1913, dude. We're just totally cooked, So Dominion can say, oh, your bills are more. And everybody say, oh, we're going to increase taxes. We're going to charge you this surcharge and this tax. It's like, I do not accept this. No, thank you. No, thanks. Yeah. So in 1913, not enough states properly ratified the 16th Amendment. there was all kinds of like clerical errors and spelling texts and all kinds of weird stuff. And, you know, it's all like read between the lines of this like hoopla jargon that doesn't make any sense. The amendment was never legally ratified, which means that Congress would lack the power to levy an unapportioned income tax on individuals and citizens. So yeah, I don't know. It's a scam.
So if you feel like not paying your taxes, you might have a leg to stand on.
Well, you know,
one leg, and it's an old leg.
Yeah. And then the IRS will blow it off with their shotguns.
Because the IRS has armed security agents that they send out into the field.
Yeah. They have $30 million in stowed ammunitions and weaponry and bulletproof vests and night vision goggles and armored tanks.
Yeah.
It's like, how interesting.
Why do the tax guys need AR-15s?
I don't know. Busch Gardens might find out.
They might.
You know, they might find out.
Oh, that sucks, man. Busch Gardens is awesome.
Yeah.
Kings Dominion is cool. I used to work there. Big fan of Kings Dominion. But Busch Gardens was always like the better move if you felt like taking the trip out to Williamsburg. It was so classy. It was like all about the German and the European vibe, and all the rides were like really cool themes. Big Bad Wolf, rest in peace. I think there's a new one there, but you know, it has a special place in my heart. You know, in the spirit of things that made Richmond and, you know, Virginia as a whole special. It looks like we're just losing them left and right.
Yeah, you know, in alignment with the putt-putt conversation and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, so Busch Gardens originated as a marketing tool for Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah.
Adolphus Busch opened the first iteration as a botanical garden in Pasadena, California in 1906.
Adolphus.
The modern, Adolphus, that's a wild name. Maybe his name was Adolf and he was like, oh, I should probably change this up a little bit. Yeah. But I mean, I guess this was before all that. So the modern theme park empire launched in 1959 with Busch Gardens in Tampa Bay, Florida, followed by Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, Virginia in 1975. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
With an initial budget of just several $1 million, it was originally dubbed the Old Country. It immersed its guests in European-themed villages representing countries such as England, Scotland, France, Germany, and Italy.
See, I always thought that was cool, man. Like
Me too.
Especially feeling a little sheltered or the lack of exposure in somewhere like Richmond outside of the history that you learn about the place that you're living in. Going to Busch Gardens felt like, you know, being exposed to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Now, that's a teeny tiny bit, and it's very Americanized for publicity purposes, but it was still really cool. As a young kid, it was a really cool experience.
I like Busch Gardens. I've always really liked Busch Gardens, and Kings Dominion is cool too. Like, we are lucky to have both of those here in Virginia, and especially during like Halloween and Christmas and stuff. So much fun.
The Hallow Scream at Busch Gardens is top tier.
Yeah.
Top tier performances. It's like that's the epitome to me. The epitome of a theme park is the entire place is supposed to feel like you're in a movie.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to feel like you're at a place that you paid to be at because, you know, everything is like mechanical and whatever. It's supposed to feel like you're in a little European village, and then down the street, you're at Harry Potter's castle. And then on Halloween, if you walk across this one bridge at 3 p.m. and then you wait until 7 p.m., it looks completely different.
Yeah.
Because the entire day, they're like changing the decorations and filling some places with smoke. And then dudes just literally pop out of freaking nowhere with chainsaws.
Yeah.
Real chainsaws. Now they take the blades off them, but like real chains. I've seen them like chase people down the runway.
Yeah.
That's really proper theater. And I love that.
Same. Yeah, it's always a blast. And both of those parks do it really, really well. I did a quick Google search on this whole tax situation with Busch Gardens, just to get an idea of, you know, what's the reality of them actually closing. And of course, we don't know how accurate this is, but it says that the headlines regarding the multi-million-dollar tax burden are from an ongoing legal dispute rather than the company having like financial insolvency or delinquency.
Right.
So the argument is that Busch Gardens owes James City County between $20 to $26 million in back taxes. This is not a case of the park running out of money, but rather the result of a calculated legal strategy regarding tax classifications. So it could be that Busch Gardens implemented a tax strategy. I mean, it's Anheuser-Busch, right? So like they know what they're doing. They got those big money, CPAs and attorneys and stuff, so maybe they have diverted money in a way to where they don't have to pay taxes. And maybe James City County is privy of that. And they're like, hey, you can't do that.
By the way, guys,
who knows?
Jigs up. You owe us a couple $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And same thing. Busch Gardens charges a 5% admissions tax. It's like, so we're the ones paying their taxes.
Yeah.
So I don't know, dude. Like,
look, it's a problem on the long list of problems that we as citizens of this great city that we like to champion have to deal with. I think it's our duty and responsibility to be aware that things are going on, and you kind of, know where your money is going. I think the older generation would say, know where your tax dollars are being spent. So the taxes that you are forced to pay attention to where they actually go. So the infrastructure, politics, politicians, food, energy, stuff like that. It's always good to be kind of just aware of that stuff. But I would argue, like I tell my friends and family, don't make it your hobby to pay attention to all of the crappy things that are going on. Because just as well as I do that attention is a currency. And the best way to get attention is with shock and awe and terrible news. It elicits a fear response. It elicits excitement, not in a good way. It causes stress and it gives people anxiety. And the news and news outlets are specifically designed to that end. That's why every time you turn on the news, they're telling you something bad. 10% of the time, they're telling you something funny or interesting. Most of the time, it is completely irrelevant, but it is just to break up the monotony of all the bad news.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor. Look on YouTube, read a book, or just walk down the street. Despite all the crappy stuff that's going on, this is a pretty incredible place. And it's your responsibility, our responsibility to keep being reminded of that.
Yeah, 100%. And these things have always gone on and they always will go on. So it's, if you get caught up in it is when you'll drive yourself crazy, And I know, because I do it to myself sometimes. I'm sure that we all do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it will always be this constant tug of war between, living life, finding abundance, doing the things you enjoy, spending time with family, friends, loved ones, having good hobbies, getting outside, being active, exercise, like doing all the fun parts of life.
Mm-hmm.
But then, there's going to be this bureaucracy on the other side trying to tell you how to do all those things and trying to convince you that there's other stuff that's important, right? And of course, there are many other things that are important. We've got to stay organized and run our lives somehow, right? But it gets frustrating when it feels like the people in charge are actually not focused on living an abundant life.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, because what else are we doing here? Like, what else are we doing here? I wish people would zoom out a little bit. And we were ironically talking about mushrooms before we clicked record. I think some of these politicians need to eat some mushrooms and chill out.
100%.
Dude. Chill out.
I know a guy. I can hook you up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that's crazy is like, if they did, they'd like all this weird technology surveillance stuff seems very strange when you look at it through the lens of like being in harmony with Earth and life and nature and what's going on here. And then it's like, oh, I'm looking up at a camera and it's looking at me and it's following me around. And it's like, wait, how did we get here, dude?
Right.
What the hell is going on?
What are you looking at, man?
It's insane.
Well, if you needed a break from all the bad news, and maybe you're like some of these new transplants, these new people that are making their way to what is becoming the new New York City. We have an abundance of clubs and things for people to do. One in particular caught my eye. I found a Reddit post from someone who just moved here. It said, I moved to Richmond recently, and for the first time in my life, I'm living completely on my own. I've always lived with family and friends and roommates and in college and housing. Now I have a stable job, my own apartment, and I'm finally at the point where I don't stress about money day-to-day basis. But the weird part is that once all of my problems disappeared, different ones showed up. Loneliness. So the comments on this was what really caught my eye. And Reddit is a really great place to get connected and engage with your community. The first comment: I joined a medieval sword fighting group. We're having an open barbecue this weekend at 168 Belt Boulevard between 12 and 6, both days if you want to come. And the comments just keep going on from there. It's like, oh, what the F? That sounds awesome. I want to go. You're welcome to come. Regular classes are Wednesday at 7. We have a beginner extra class on Fridays and advanced class on Mondays. No kit or dollar needed to try. Dues are $25 a month and your month after your 5th class. And it just goes on and on and on. And this entire thread is about a medieval sword fighting class.
Yeah.
So if you are out there and you're wondering, why can't I meet anyone, or feeling lonely, like that the city you just moved to or trying to embrace isn't embracing you back, fear not. It is, and it wants to, especially if you're interested in medieval sword fighting.
Yeah, 100%. This is a great Reddit thread, and Reddit is great. You find all kinds of cool stuff on here. I saw that they were doing that pop-up barbecue thing at Feluca's in Carytown.
Yeah.
And I just put it on my calendar and I was like, I'm going to go check this out and like support somebody who's making barbecue locally.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of great posts on this thread, and maybe a good place to leave it is I'm looking at a comment that somebody said in response, and it said, to be a successful adult, sometimes you need to force yourself out of your comfort zone. You say that you aren't the type to go to a bar and meet people. What's the difference between that and meeting new people at work? Oh, you are meeting new people at work because you have to. It's critical to put food on your table. You have to use the same mindset to meet people in your social life. It's critical to your mental well-being. Moving to a new city doesn't mean people are going to be like, oh, hey, look, it's the new guy. Welcome, friend. You have to make that happen. And I think it comes full circle to a big part of why we do this podcast and why we created this studio. When we met up at the end of 2024 and we sat around and talked about our goals for this place, a lot of it had to do with being more like involved in the community, meeting new people, finding an excuse to get more social, exploring things to do around Richmond, and finding something that like contributes to your life. So maybe that's a medieval sword fighting class. Maybe it's a run club. Maybe it's the Carytown Run Club.
Yeah.
Who knows? Every other Saturday morning, look it up, check it out. We hope that some of the things that we talk about on this podcast, of course, bring positivity and abundance and ideas and just all good things. That's our goal. But we do tend to be enticed by some of the frustrating, annoying things too, whether it's bad drivers or, whatever else. But at the end of the day, we're just having fun. We're having a good time.
Yeah. We're just out here doing our best. This podcast was recorded at Vera House Studios in Richmond, Virginia, and produced by Perri Young and Myke Metzger.